What's up? This is Syren. So we just went through the 10-day experience and how the technique was laid out over the 10 days. And like I said, it is a very, very, very general summary of the technique. There's nothing like actually experiencing it, as well as listening to all the discourses every single night. I just want to talk about my experience with the technique. True wisdom means understanding things at the experiential level. The experiential level. I never knew what that meant before. And that means a lot to me because the way that I've been going through life is that things feel so big and so difficult that I need the solution to be just as difficult and just as complex. And even though solutions would come to me as simple, I couldn't accept them. I even created an aversion to them because out of pride, I couldn't let the solution to something be so simple. One of my favorite examples that I give many people, especially when I was a trainer, is that to be healthy, yes, we all have different conditions and different bodies, etc., but it really boils down to eat right and exercise. As much as you want it to be some kind of magical thing or your genetics or whatever, you can pretty much say that if you work out right and eat right, you're going to be healthy. Let's take another example, relationships. Treat others as you'd like to treat yourself. Respect yourself, respect others. Love yourself, love others. All those things are also simple, but they mean nothing if you're just intellectualizing it. You actually have to do it. And when you have some kind of, let's call it programming, deep down inside, when you're hardwired for certain things, it manifests itself physically in life and opportunities and relationships. So I've lived in different parts around the country. I've made a lot of friends. I've worked in a lot of places. I've been in a lot of different bands. And with those people alone, they're so different from each other. Yet certain patterns in relationships for me kept coming up, whether they're good or bad. So the fact that these same physical patterns manifest regardless of the person or place, I have nowhere else to look but to myself. And this is a very, very difficult thing for me, and I'm assuming for a lot of people, because it puts the responsibility to get what you want, to have the kind of relationships you want, up to you. So I've meditated for years, and I knew that not all meditation is the same, but going through this specific meditation taught me just how different each type of meditation is. For example, the primary method I would use is experiencing no mind, which is just calming the mind down so much that you're able to have true knowledge. Another type is called metta, which is a loving kindness meditation, where you feel so much love that you resonate it out, and then you can direct that towards either the whole world or to a specific person or people. Another type of meditation is visualization, that when you visualize something, you are actually taking the first step towards creating it in the world. So with Vipassana, reaching no mind is more of the first step to actually practicing it. And the way to observe is to start physically by observing sensations in your body. And the theory from Vipassana is that once you just observe, you can eradicate negativities, or what Goenka calls impurities. Everything we experience, every emotion, every thought has a reaction in our body. When something happens to us, if we're super reactive, that means we're pretty much not in control of what's happening. So by stopping something, you're taking out the wiring in your mind and in yourself to keep reacting the same way. And a farther step is to replace it with positive things. And even further than that is to not only have these positive wirings or patterns or connections or habits, but just to observe them. And when you can observe them, you are the observer. You're this thing deeper than your thoughts, deeper than your emotions, beyond your reactions, and you can be more in control. So the primary lesson of true wisdom is experiencing these things. If you wanted to tell somebody to fly a plane, you can show them a picture of the plane, you can show them the dashboard with all the different buttons and the steering wheel or whatever they have, and they can read a whole textbook on how to fly a plane, and they'll understand it intellectually. But until they fly that plane, until they're up there in the air, and they go through the challenges of whatever it takes to fly, that's how you learn. And again, this is a simple explanation, but it's so profound, and it's something that's going to help me going forward in life, is that I can plan things all I want, I can understand things all I want, but until I actually experience them in the deepest way is when the things that I want to happen are actually going to happen. The second lesson of Anicha, of change, is that a lot of us try to control our situations, which that's healthy. We should want to direct things a certain way, but something that causes a lot of suffering and pain is when we try to keep things a certain way, when we get attached. If you can understand that everything's changing, you are truly seeing things for what they are. And then from that place of reality, that's the only time things are possible, and not only possible, but powerful. And that works for people as well as your career, things like that, because you can't change anyone else, nor is anyone else staying the same. And if you could just accept them for how they are, that is such a much more peaceful way to live. And then the third primary lesson that I took from Vipassana is the concept of craving and aversion. When we feel these sensations, we must not develop a craving or an aversion to the sensation. When you crave something that isn't there, you're suffering. When you are attached to something that is changing or that goes away, that's suffering. So in order to stop suffering, you need to just be able to observe these sensations, whether they're positive or negative, meaning good or bad, which in certain essences you can say that nothing really is good or bad, right? But initially I had a problem with that because there are definitely things that I feel a strong aversion to. Let's take some big things like racism or sexism. That shit's fucked up. So I'm just supposed to be okay with that? But during one of the discourses, when I was just about to give up, he gives me this story that being balanced does not mean being passive at all. They're completely different things. You can still fight for things, but do it from a place of balance. Or the word that he used that I prefer to use is equanimous. So being equanimous does not mean being ignorant or not caring. If you see somebody on the street getting their ass beat, you don't just sit there and say, oh, I'm equanimous, I'll let it be. No, you can, from a balanced place, help that person. And since you're so equanimous, you don't judge the person that's abusing. You just try to help both. You feel the love for both. This is a very advanced state of being, and I'm definitely not there. I'd probably just try to beat the ass of the abuser, but I still understand what he meant. Going back to my bigger example with racism and sexism, I've definitely felt a lot of pain throughout life and through things I've observed with those things. And so I was angry a lot. And I didn't want to let go of my anger because I identified with it. And your ego gets addicted to having that identity and doesn't want to let it go, even though it causes you pain. So this lesson of being equanimous and finally understanding deeply that it doesn't mean passivity, it doesn't mean ignorance, allows me to let that go, because I believe now that I could still fight for those things. Because sexism sucks, it's painful, it's bad. But if I'm just angry all the time and I give in to that negativity, then I can't do anything about it. So hence, by seeing things as they really are, I now have the power to do something about it and not lose myself while I'm doing something about it. And something that I relate being equanimous to is being aware, and I kind of came up with my own conclusion since I'm an artist and I come across artists all the time. At the moment, most of the people that I know that are very artistic are unhappy, and yet I still admire them, and even for myself I wouldn't have it any other way. So I am now identifying that with just being super aware. So I meet a lot of people that are super spiritual, but they still feel kind of lost, but they still don't want to go back to that hamster wheel of doing the same shit over and over again. So I call it this in-between state. And then I meet people that are super balanced, super equanimous, but they still look kind of dead inside. So my goal now is to not only be aware, because I've always been aware, that's why I'm super emotional, that's why I feel things so deeply, but also to be equanimous, and that's going to be part of my work doing Vipassana. So thanks again for listening. See you next video. Namaste.